In this video, we're going over 5 mistakes most soccer players make while passing. Hey, what's up guys? Dave here from Simplysoccer, where we're helping you to improve your game and stand out on the pitch. And on this channel, we release daily soccer tip, technique, and training videos. So if you haven't already, please consider hitting that subscribe button and bell icon so you don't miss any new videos that we do. Now, in this video, I want to go over some of the common mistakes I see players make when passing. Now, some of these may be pretty obvious and you just need a refresher and reminder of, but there are a few others you may have not considered yet are really important when it comes to passing correctly. The thing about passing, it's a skill that many of us learn very early on and fail to revisit later as we're playing. But there's actually a lot of nuanced things that go into passing and a lot of things you need to keep in mind if you want to pass well in specific or different situations. So let's jump right into it with number 1, which is too little or too much. And what I mean by that is that based on whatever situation you're in, passing it either too hard or too softly to your teammate or into the space that your teammate is moving into. Now, tell me if this is something that frustrates you when you get a pass from a teammate. You have the open space, you've got plenty of space around you, and you want the ball played firmly into you, but instead it's passed very lightly, and by the time you receive the ball, there's already an opponent on you. It's in situations like this that it's not good enough just to pass the ball in any old way to your teammate. You need to know how hard or how soft you need to pass the ball to a teammate. For example, in certain situations, you need to hit it a little less if you're trying to play your teammate into space so that they can run onto it. Different passes should have different pace on them. For example, if your teammate is there for a very simple short pass, like 5 yards away, if you drill it into them and they have to take a few touches to control it, or they miscontrol it, that's no good. Now you should still pass it firmly into them, but you don't want to drill it into them. It's the same if, again, your teammate's a little further away with plenty of space and you pass it too slowly. You slow down the play when otherwise they may have been able to exploit that space much more quickly. These are little subtle things, but it's still very important. So make sure you're working on your passing to the point where you're comfortable being able to pass it with pace, and when you're comfortable with taking a little bit of the pace off of the ball, because you're going to need both for different situations. Next mistake is passing the ball too high. Now this is one that is a pet peeve for most players who are receiving a pass, but for the majority of passes, something that it goes on all the time in the game, like passing is one of the main things that you're going to be doing during the game. Passing too high in situations that don't call for it is just hurting your team. For most passes, you want to keep it on the deck. And the reason for this is because a pass on the ground is easier to control and quicker to control than a pass that's in the air. A pass that comes to my feet, I can take in the direction I want to go, I can shield the ball or play it on the foot I want, while a pass in the air, I have to bring down to my feet and take more touches to control. So keep most of your passes on the deck and low. You don't want to be having passes that are bobbling into your teammates. You don't want passes like knee height, chest height, thigh height, head height, unless it is necessary. Of course, there are long passes you can do and elevated passes, but if the intention or if the situation doesn't call for that type of pass, keep it on the deck and keep it on the floor, because if you don't, it's just going to be a pain in the butt for your teammate. It's going to take more time most of the time for them to control it, and you're just making things harder on yourself. Number 3 is passing to the wrong foot. Now this is a more subtle, nuanced part of passing that I don't think many players consider. When passing to a teammate, most of us just think that passing in their general direction or vicinity is enough, but a lot more goes into that. In certain situations, you should be passing to your teammate's left or right foot. Certain situations, you do not want to pass to a certain foot depending on the situation. For example, if I have an opponent a few yards away from me on my left side, you would most likely want to play it into my right foot so I can automatically shield the ball or turn in the other direction or take a touch backwards to protect the ball. If you play it to my left foot in that situation, you allow for the opportunity for my opponent to take the ball away from me, or I have to take some more touches or really rush my play in order to maintain possession. In that situation, it is much better to pass to my right side. Another example, let's say it's the same thing, but I am wide open and the goal I'm going towards is in that direction and I don't have an opponent there. Playing it to my left foot will allow me to open up into that space, where if you play it to my right foot, I'm gonna have to take an additional touch before doing that, and in that time I might be closed down. So as you can see, although it may not seem like it, what foot you play it to is actually very important. It's kind of like playing it in front of your teammate is going to be better than playing it behind them in certain situations, or playing it to their feet is going to be better than trying to play them into space in other situations. We will cover that in a second, but really try and think about what foot you should be playing it to when you're passing it to your teammate, because it actually does make a difference. It's very subtle, but it does make a difference. Okay, so I just touched on this a little bit, but number 4 is poor decision passing. Now, what I mean by this is making the wrong decision with your passing. Sometimes you want to pass into feet, sometimes you want to pass into space. Now, the key difference between the two, it may seem simple, but it actually is a huge difference. There will be situations where it's not good to play the ball ahead of your teammate because they're either not going to get there, they're not making a run in the first place, or the ball is just going to be intercepted or taken away. There are other times where playing it into their feet is just going to slow down the play, where they have a lot of space to work with and need the ball fed in front of them. Again, you need to be able to read each situation, and this does come down to soccer IQ. This is a part of soccer IQ, knowing what to do in different situations, but you can watch some of the best passers in the world, some of the best playmakers in the world, and you'll find they know when to play into feet. They know when to put it ahead in the space. They know when to drill it into a player's feet instead of trying to play into space that's not really available, or their teammate won't get to. So know the difference between when you should be playing it into space and when you should be playing it into a player's feet. Again, like I said, maybe sometimes you want to drill it into their feet so that if a defender does try and dive in and intercept it, it's going to get to them and they're not going to be able to intercept it in time. Other times you may have a teammate bursting down the wing, and if you try and play it into their feet in that moment, it's either going to slow them down and kind of ruin the counterattack or play, or not allow them to bear down on goal as quickly or have that space available, but it might go behind them as well. They may run right by it and not be able to stop. Again, this is such an important difference that isn't always that talked about all the time. You need to know when you need to play it into space, and you need to know when you need to play in the feet. Now, each one of these types of passes, there's many ways to do it. Again, sometimes it'll just be a simple pass in the feet. Sometimes you'll drill it. Sometimes you'll do it in the air. You know, sometimes when you play it into space, it'll be a longer pass, it'll be a driven pass, it'll be really into space or a little bit in front of them. You know, there's a lot that goes into this. Again, it's more nuanced, and I find one of the best ways to take a look at this is watch really, really good playmaker players and see what they do. You know, watch some old footage of Pirlo, for example. He was really good at this. Watch some footage of Xavi, another expert at passing. You know, watch some footage of Zidane. You know, you can find these players who do this very effectively and study them so you can get an idea of when you should be doing each type of pass. Okay, and finally, number 5 is limiting yourself. I can't tell you how many players I've played with or played against where they're very limited in their passing ability. And this comes down to practice, but where I've had players who are only able to use the inside of their feet to pass the ball. That's very limiting, only being able to do that. Only being able to pass in one way will only get you so far in the game. If you don't have the ability to pass a long ball, a driven ball, or a ball with the outside of your foot, you're limiting what you can do, because there will be certain situations where you're not going to be able to quickly put it onto the inside of your foot and pass, and you'll need to use the outside. But if you haven't trained doing that, you're not going to be able to do it. I can't tell you how many times I've played really good balls or have had assists from using the outside of my foot to put a teammate in on goal. It's been numerous times, and I can't even think of all the times it's happened. But if I hadn't trained in being able to use the outside of my foot to do that, and I had limited myself, I wouldn't have been able to make those plays. The same is true with chipped passes or longer passes. If you don't work on this area of your game, you're limiting yourself to when maybe there's a 30 or 40-yard ball you could play, but because you haven't worked on being able to clip the ball over to defense or play a driven ball or do that long passing technique, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that situation. So what I recommend is you don't limit yourself. Work on these areas so that when you find yourself with opportunities to do different types of passing techniques, you are practiced enough to do it. I mean, if you look again at players like Xavi and Pirlo, they could do every single passing technique. They would even do ones you would never even expect. They would get very creative with it. But if they had not practiced those things and didn't have the ability to do so, they would have been much less effective as playmakers. All right, guys, so I'm actually gonna do one more as a little bonus. I'm not gonna get really in depth with it because it's kind of a simple one, but after kind of recording and writing the notes down, I figured it needs to be included. And another big mistake players make when passing is just watching their pass and admiring it. Pass and move. Very important, especially at the high level. If you pass and sit still and admire that pass and go, what a lovely pass that was, again, you're limiting yourself. You need to pass and move. When you play that pass to your teammate, move into space, move out of the space you're in so another teammate can move into it. You know, move things around. You know, do some give and goes, combination plays. If you just keep passing and sitting still, unless you're deliberately staying in place for a positional purpose, like you need to be in that position, then again, you're not doing everything you possibly could. After you play that long ball, don't just admire the long ball, join in on the attack. When you put your winger in through on the wing, get into the box or whatever position you're supposed to be in after that. You know, make it automatic so it's an instinct, so that every time after you pass, you're on the move. Okay, it's just a good habit to pick up and something I wanted to include that I forgot to write in my notes for this video. All right, guys, so let me know in the comments what other passing mistakes do you see many players make commonly that I have not mentioned in this video. Please let us know in the comments. I'll be down there looking at all your comments and replying to them, and I would love to see what you think should also have been included in this list. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I want to thank you for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Please like and share this video and subscribe to Simplysoccer if you have not already, as again, we release videos almost every single day to help you become a better player. I will have 2 videos come across the screen, and if you haven't already, get my ebook, Game Changer, absolutely free to do so. So if you haven't picked it up yet, definitely just go into the description to get the link to get that. Once again, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video.